Diplomatic efforts continue this hour to pull the Middle East back from the brink of a regional war. The push for a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is gaining further urgency as the two sides continue aerial assaults on each other. This video shows a residential building collapsing in a city in southern Lebanon. Israeli warplanes launched airstrikes against dozens of Hezbollah targets today, with officials reporting dozens of deaths. Despite the airstrikes, Beirut's international airport continues to operate for now, and this was the scene earlier today. You can see relative calm there as people checked in for a decreasing number of flights. Ottawa continues to urge all Canadians to leave Lebanon immediately. But we begin our coverage with word of the Israeli military taking aim at Iran-backed rebels in Yemen. And this was the scene after an airstrike on a western port city. CBC's Sasha Petrusik is in Jerusalem with all the day's developments.
Lots of parts of this conflict are advancing and escalating, and let me just walk you through the ones that we know about from today. In particular, an interesting development is that Israel struck parts of Yemen today. Now, that's 1,800 kilometers away from where I'm standing right now, but it's also where, over the past few days, a number of missiles and drones have been sent toward either Tel Aviv or other parts of Israel by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And Israel has decided to strike back, much in the way it's been striking back at Hezbollah when rockets come in this way, or for that matter, into Syria when they feel that there is a threat from that side, and of course from into Gaza with Hamas. So a very broad area of conflict right now. Also, of course, more airstrikes in Lebanon itself, the south of Lebanon. Israel announced more than 45 of these happened today. Actually 45 within 1 hour, and there were many others aside from that. In one case, a village was hit. Some 24 people were killed, according to Lebanese officials, many others injured. That's just one little snapshot of what is happening in Lebanon and the kind of strikes that are happening both ways. Also, rockets that were fired into northern Israel today. No injuries have been reported, but that's because the Israeli air defense system intercepted those and stopped them from coming in. Some do land, but in most cases they have been landing in open fields, occasionally hitting a house or something like that, but very low rate of injuries in Israel from these rockets so far at this point. Now, as you mentioned, there have been reports that Israel is preparing to send its ground troops into Lebanon, which would be a major development in all of this. They are ready to go. There's tens of thousands at the border, and the reports suggested that they might be going in to attack some Hezbollah positions near the border. Now, we don't have confirmation of any of that from the Israeli military, but as I say, it is something that they have said. They've told us that they are ready to do and may well have to come next, despite all of the air strikes and the sort of air campaign that has been going on, which Israel considers to have been very successful. Now, with all of that going on, that is all geared toward the war side, the fighting side, the conflict side. But of course, others in the world, especially the Americans, are working very hard to try to come up with some sort of a diplomatic solution to head off any kind of further escalation, to even stop what's going on right now. And one of the people who's been speaking out about this is in Washington. It's John Kirby, a national security advisor with the White House. This is what he had to say today.
We believe and continue to believe that an all-out war with Hezbollah, certainly with Iran, is not the way to do that. If you want to get those folks back home safely and sustainably, we believe that a diplomatic path is the right course.
Now, what the Americans consider is a big problem with all of that is, of course, the assassination of Nasrallah, the killing of the leader of Hezbollah. on Friday, and this happened in an Israeli airstrike on Beirut. This has raised all kinds of issues and a lot of fear in Washington that this is going to make things escalate. His body was actually found and pulled out of the rubble today, along with some 20 other senior commanders of Hezbollah who were in that same building, in that same bunker, when the Israeli military, the Air Force, dropped something like 80 bombs on it in order to kill the people who were inside. One other person who was inside was a senior Iranian official with the Revolutionary Guard, which has raised all kinds of other diplomatic and potentially military issues. Linda?
That was the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Hassan Nasrallah led Hezbollah for more than 3 decades, and Israel's assassination has been met with both feelings of joy and rage across the world. CBC's Julia Chapman is in London with more on the reaction.
Responses to the death of Hassan Nasrallah have varied widely across the world. Israel's allies certainly aren't mourning the loss of the Hezbollah leader. The group is a designated terrorist organization in Canada, the US and the UK, and Nasrallah led it for decades. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued a statement saying Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah has been killed. He was the leader of a terrorist organization that attacked and killed innocent civilians, causing immense suffering across the region. He went on to call for a ceasefire in Lebanon, for civilians to be protected, and he urged restraint. And the Prime Minister said Canada is working towards a diplomatic solution. US President Joe Biden was also asked for his reaction to Nasrallah's death. Here's what he had to say.
Mr. President, is a ground incursion into Lebanon inevitable?
Time for a ceasefire.
Will you visit the hurricane site? Will you respond to the missile attacks on the U.S. warships? Will you respond?
Hundreds of Americans. It described his killing as a measure of justice for his victims. The U.S. president says a deal to end the fighting in Lebanon needs to be secured, but he reiterated his support for Israel's right to defend itself. In other parts of the world, there's been a sense of sadness about Nasrallah's death, criticism of Israel, and fear of increasing bloodshed. In Iran, Hezbollah's backer, there has been an outpouring of grief, and 5 days of national mourning are underway. Officials there gathered on Sunday for a ceremony to mark his death. Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad expressed his condolences and called Nasrallah the head of the resistance. Hezbollah has played a major part in propping up his regime, although Syrians opposed to Assad's rule have very much been celebrating Nasrallah's death. Elsewhere, Russia's foreign ministry called this a political assassination, saying that Israel bears the responsibility for what happens next. China says it's deeply concerned and urged Israel in particular to cool down the temperature. And Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan didn't name Nasrallah in a statement he posted on X, but he accused Israel of becoming more reckless and carrying out what he called massacres. So there are different perspectives on what Nasrallah's death means, but it's fair to say there is a sense of global unity when it comes to calling for hostilities to end. Julia Chapman, CBC News, London.
The rapidly escalating conflict is forcing families to flee their homes. According to Save the Children, about 140,000 children are among those who have left home. For more on this, I spoke with Jennifer Moorhead in Beirut. She is the country director for Save the Children Lebanon, and she described the effect of the airstrikes on children in the south.
Children all over the country are now affected by this conflict that has engulfed nearly the entire country. Children in the south of the country, however, since October have been under a pretty constant bombardment of shelling and other kinds of weapons, and many of them have been displaced into collective shelters, safe spaces for people to live when the villages have become unsafe. Just in the past week, however, with this dramatic escalation, hundreds of thousands of people, as you said, have taken to the roads are fleeing. The government now is estimating over 1 million people are on the road or are displaced. That's nearly 10% of Lebanon's population. The scale of this is just huge. And in the capital, in Beirut, we see it's everywhere. There are lines of cars of people trying to get to collective shelters or someplace safe. There's not enough shelters for people to enter. Families are sleeping in their cars, and the sense of terror is palpable. Children are just terrified. The rapidity of the flight that they have just undergone has really been a dramatic feature of this last week.
And what are you hearing from those families and the children about what they're going through at the moment?
Families are arriving to these shelters just in absolute distress. They're carrying just what they were able to take from their homes with their children in their arms, and in a state of just despair and fear. They talk about the fear of the unknown. No one knows what's going to happen. This regional conflict has been so terribly, catastrophic, so terribly difficult, and the families feel it, and children, in particular, are feeling it all the time. I mean, just this latest escalation happened just days after the school year began, and the Ministry of Education, of course, has had to close the schools, and this year then marks the 5th year of children being unable to or severely disrupted education, which is the most important feature for a child, for stability and for feeling and for recovery, and it'll take these kids generations to recover from this educational loss.
That is Jennifer Moorhead, the country director for Save the Children Lebanon.